Okay, so we'll chant Om 3 times. Om. 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 Sahana bhavatu sahano bhunaktu saviryam karavavahe tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So welcome everyone. And so we're going to begin, and so what we're going to be doing today, so this is the 12th talk, and we've been going for a year now, and so the aim of today is to provide a context for what we have learned so far. And so the objectives is to understand the roles and the uniqueness of the scriptures, and where does this knowledge that we've been looking at come from, understand the sources of what we have learned so far, and obviously the idea is just to provide an overview. So it is going to be like just a drop in the ocean, so that we know what it is all out there. So it, well, it's not with an intention to remember necessarily what we do, what I'll be saying today. There will be quite a bit of terms. So for those of you who know, that'd be fine. For those of you who don't, that's also fine. And so I guess what we have learned so far is about, well, I've always referred to it as Indian philosophy, and so that's how we've been referring to it now. So today we're going to find out what exactly we've been studying. So so the subject matter of what we've been studying is actually about us, about, you know, they are the only texts which tell us who we really are. So, you know, when we look at science or anything else, they're telling us about external objects. They are telling us about various things around us, and fabulous, you know, explanations about what's going on, why and how, and what happens when you mix two things together, and what do you see, and, you know, all that kind of things about things external to us. And these are really extraordinary, because this philosophy is about me and nothing but me, just you know, just about us and who we truly are. And therefore it is directly relevant to us, so to each one of us, and it is about our lives. And we will see how it's still relevant 2,000 years on, or 4,000 years on, whatever you like. And there is, of course, a very academic side to this philosophy, and this is not why I study it, and this is not something that I do from an academic point of view, but I look at it from a practical point of view, which is what I've been teaching so far. So there is a lot of debates, there is a lot of nuances and you know, in academic discourse that we don't get into, and I don't even know about some of them. I'm aware of them, but I don't really get into the details. So I take the practical side of it, and that is really what it is meant to be for the majority of us. And of course, there would be some scholars who would be interested in a slightly different angle. So what it provides us is some food for thought for the mind. So we need food for the body, but we also need food for the mind, and this is the food for the mind, really. And what it tries to do is it tries to have truthful answers to fundamental questions about life and universe, about question of our very existence, questions that people have, but often people kind of brush it to the side and say, oh, I can't be bothered with these existential kind of questions, which is absolutely fine. But for those of us who think about these things, who spend time to want to know these things, then this is where one of the important sources is. And what it also does is it removes dogmatism. And as we have seen, and as I've encouraged you from the beginning, to not really believe anything that I say, is to experiment for yourself, is to think about it and to ask questions and to find out. So it is really not a matter of belief, but also it is a matter of understanding. And once we understand, then there is no issue of dogmatism and fanaticism and one-sided kind of argument, really. And it also encourages broad-mindedness to kind of see things in slightly different way. And for some of you, I know this was your first encounter with this, and some of the ways of thinking is quite fundamental to what we've been taught for very many years, and what our parents know, etc. So really, it's just to kind of embrace diversity and see things from a slightly different point of view. And then finally, but not least, is what we have been looking at is got the ability. So we've called it the self-knowledge. Those with this subject matter being me, so therefore self and knowledge has the ability to reduce sorrow and to increase happiness. So it helps us to really realize that the happiness is something that is inside us, and it is not something that is outside. So it's up to us to find it inside. And of course, other things that are outside provide us with happiness as well. But we know that the nature of that happiness that is provided to us is quite temporary in nature, because the real happiness is actually within us. So, so as you have guessed, is that this comes from Sanatan Dharma, so which is in the Indian culture, or and Hinduism. This is where this whole thing comes from, and it is one of the oldest religions in the world. And Sanatan means eternal or everlasting. And the name is everlasting because, as we will see shortly, it's been around for about 4,000 years. And so here what dharma means, so dharma means observance or prescribed conduct which relates to justice, virtue, or morality. So these are the things that by virtue of being a human being, we just know. We just know what is right. We just know what is wrong. Whether we do it is a different story, but deep down, we just know these things. And that's just by virtue of being a human being. And more than a religion, really, it is a way of life to be practiced by one and all. So it is not the it doesn't belong to anyone. It is there for every single person who wants to embrace it as a way of life. So so I don't mean to compare it with anything here, but I will just give some things that I think kind of distinguishes it for some way. Is that there is no fear mongering. So it's not kind of saying, oh, if you don't do this, if you don't do that, then something bad will happen, or there's none of that. It is kind of saying, this is a way of life. If you want happiness, if you want happiness to a certain degree, this is what you do. If you want ultimate happiness, this is what you do and how you get it, and this is what it is. So basically, it's just a very matter of fact kind of thing with loads of options. And it also accepts other religions. So in its framework, it kind of embraces all the other religions. It doesn't negate anything. It doesn't kind of say, well, this is superior to another one or anything like that. So there is scope to kind of understand other religions within what we're studying. I mean, obviously there will be differences, but it kind of encompasses and makes provision for other religions to exist as well. And it also has got explanations for why that happens and why we need other religions, etc. And also there is no conversion, there is no, there's never any pressure to convert. As a matter of fact, you just don't convert. It's just whether you want to kind of embrace some of it or all of it or whatever, or not at all, and that's fine. And it is not an institution based, so unlike so there isn't like one institution which is the head, if you like. I mean, in some countries there might be various guardians, if you like, in some ways or whatever, but it's not so much institution based in the way that others are. I mean, I don't know if it's a good or bad thing. It's just a fact. And I think one thing also, one distinguishing factor is again, it encourages people to ask questions, and it doesn't ask anyone to believe anything. So it says, listen with an open mind, and then contemplate and ask questions, get your doubts resolved, and then we'll see. So, I mean, I think it is important to kind of recognize that we do need a little bit of faith in what we are learning. I mean, I think you've all been coming to these lectures, and there must have been a little bit of trust and a little bit of faith that you kind of thought, this might resonate with me. So I wouldn't kind of say you don't have to have any at all, because you do have to have a little bit of trust to kind of say, see whether this resonates with you at all or not. And I actually remember somebody in the group who kind of very honestly and lovingly said, after a few talks, was like, okay, this goes over my head, and but then I can see that there is something there that I want to know more about, and I want to be able to understand some of it. So really, you do need, like with everything else, whatever you do, you need a little bit of trust, and then you kind of investigate whether you like it or not, or whether this is for you or not. So then we move on to the question of why we do have to bother about the about the scriptures in this case. So to just take a little step backward, well, not backward, but just back. So there are different means of knowledge. So for those of us who work in labs and wear white coats in lab, so normally how we try to discover knowledge is we have direct physical perception. Okay, so we mix two gases together, we observe what happens, we measure the temperature, we observe what's going on, and sometimes we can touch something. So we use our senses to kind of see what's going on, and this is what constitutes knowledge. Okay, so similarly, if you're doing kind of research in in other areas, you would kind of put your fact together, you would understand it, you would look at it. So there are other ways of doing of understanding or gaining knowledge through inference. And so there are other means, but I'm not going to go into this. I mean, I didn't want this to be a theoretical thing. So then, well, here, what we are trying to understand is self-knowledge and who we really are. And we have learned that we are this Atma, this consciousness, and in which case the self-knowledge is not visible. It's got no form, it's got no weight, there's no way you can touch it either. So therefore, our conventional means of understanding consciousness, and even inference to a certain degree, is probably not enough to make us understand who we really are. So therefore, we need to kind of resort to other ways of getting the proof for what we are seeing, or understanding what we're seeing. So here, in the pursuit of self-knowledge, so we have to rely on the scriptures which contain the proof. So, and this is what we're going to be looking at a little bit in more detail today. So I'm going to be using the word scriptures, and for those of you who understand, is the word shastra, which is the collective name for all the literature that exists. So as I say, I'll mention these words. If it doesn't click, it doesn't have to click, right? So don't worry about any of these. And so I do apologize for the quality of this. You don't need to see it, you don't need to understand this, but I'm just going to talk through, and also I will talk what we need to know. I'll go through in other slides, but here this is just an overview of the religious scriptures, or the scriptures of self-knowledge that we have. So the first thing is to understand about this knowledge is that it is considered as so we use the word shruti here, so you don't need to remember it, but what it means is it is heard or it is revealed. So these, and we also say that this knowledge is not actually human from human, so it comes directly from the gods. And so it is people in deep state of meditation thousands of years ago, where the mind was a lot purer, where things were very different, and the people were receptive to this kind of thing, and they were just in tune, and this was possible. So if you like, it's just a purer form of telepathy, where you can actually communicate with someone, which is very possible. And it is all about physics and how this is possible. And again, this is something slightly different. So the way this knowledge was revealed is through, well, if you like, the main foundation were the Vedas. So there are 4 Vedas. So they are the Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, and Atharva Veda. So they've got different parts of it. So I'm not going to talk about this in much detail now. We'll look again. But some part, so the important things to understand about the Vedas is they are absolutely massive. Absolutely massive and massive literature, and they're all in form of mantras, and that were kind of revealed and heard and preserved mentally, basically. And so the Vedas have 4 different parts. So I'll come back to this diagram. I just wanted to talk about this a little bit first. So the Vedas have got four parts, if you like. So they've got the mantras, so the various mantras that people can recite. So and then they've also got ritualistics and how to perform various rituals. And the idea in this ritual is how why people perform rituals is a direct way of counteracting karma to a certain extent, if you like. And then Aranya, well, the contemplatives, so they are the details about the rituals and the why and the how and the logic behind the rituals. So this bit is actually how to carry out those rituals. And then the other ones is more about about more details and reflections on these. And then the final part of each of these Vedas, so these 4 Vedas, each one of them has got a final part, and that's the one that we are interested in mainly, is the Vedanta philosophy, or the Upanishads. So Upanishad, I'll explain Upanishad in a few minutes, but just for now to understand. So the so the Vedanta is actually what we have been looking at, and that's the part that contains this self-knowledge section, and that's the one that we've been really looking at in a bit more detail. So to go back to this diagram, so therefore if we go back to this Upanishad here, the self-knowledge, so that, and here there is what we call the Vedanta corpus. So I'll come back to this in a bit. But so apart from this kind of main bit, if you like, then there are other things, the applied disciplines to help us understand the Vedas. And so so there is something about phonetics, so about pronunciation, about how exact it should be and how things are done. And then there is grammar, which we all know, and some of us hate, some of us love, and some of us have never heard of. But grammar is kind of a really important part of the language. And then there is, and as we said earlier on, for the Vedas, there are mantras in there that we need to kind of recite, and they need to be recited in a certain ways, in certain meters, and this is called the chandas or the prosody. And then there is etymology, so the roots of various meanings of words. So there are about 2,000 roots, and where they all come from, and to kind of make words from all of them for the language. And then comes the astrology. So again, there is the belief that there are various placements of planets or whatever is happening in the universe will have an effect on us, and it explains that. It explains how this is working, and it is a whole different science of itself, and it includes astrology, astronomy, numerology, and all sorts of things like that. And then there is a little 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, and then the sixth one is about the know-how of Vedic rituals, so how to perform Vedic rituals. And then there are another category of text, if you like, and there is Ayurveda that some of us might have heard about. So this is the holistic medicine part, the Indian medicine that is becoming quite popular in the West as well now. So it's got a whole preventive kind of approach. So it is public health in a different degree, and also it is very much about prevention, and it is also about looking at the whole person, not treating one disease, but treating the whole person, rather than just, in a Western way of how we treat things. And also the very interesting part of Ayurveda as well is it's personalized medicine. So basically, how you are treated will depend on your personality, will depend on your routine, will depend on your lifestyle, will depend on all sorts of questions, of things very, very individual to you. So basically, when we go to our GP wouldn't ask about these things, and we wouldn't, an Ayurvedic practitioner, for instance, would ask you some of the questions that we might find quite offensive, but which tells a lot about our personality or a lot about what's going on inside our body. So including some of the questions that you would be extremely shocked. Okay, so composition or the look of stools or things like that, which is a very, in some ways, an essential part of our digestive system, which tells a very big story about what's going on in our body. So, and so moving on, there is also the Artha Shastra, so about state, about warfare, so about architecture, and about music. So basically what people kind of say is that if it's not in the Vedas, then it's just not worth knowing, because everything that affects us from that time is also very relevant today, including warfare, architecture, music. Everything is in there, and it's got some fantastic explanation. So going back to this bit about the Vedanta here, so there are various, so the Vedanta is the philosophy that we've been looking at, and so there are the Upanishad and Bhagavad Gita, which is another text that we have alluded to occasionally, and Brahma Sutra. They are the main bits of the main corpus, if you like, of Vedanta. The one Vedanta means well, Ved is the Veda, and Anta is the end. But then what we've been looking at is the theory of oneness. And the third bit of it is these, so don't worry about the name, and they are things that have been written thereafter. So they are not revealed directly as the Vedas are. So they are things that came later on by people who understood and then wrote them. So these ones, the Prakarana Grantha. So basically, what we have been doing in these 11 weeks is we have been following a textbook, which is the Tattva Bodha mainly. So we have been looking at this, but we haven't kind of looked at the text. We haven't, but I've been following this structure, which is one of the most basic texts and about this philosophy. So so that's what I've been following, but not to the letter. But this is just gave the framework for what we've been studying so far. And then, so because there is so much of it, and none of these, well, not none, but the language and everything in the Vedas, because it was all passed on orally, then the language is very terse and it's very, very, very cryptic. And so we need commentaries and commentaries and commentaries to be able to understand them. And we call them bhashya, so don't worry about them, they're just commentaries. And a lot of them was written by Adi Shankaracharya, so whom we've talked about before. And in the initial prayer, we kind of honor Shankaracharya as well, as he's one of the guardian of this tradition. And he lived in about in 800 AD around. And then there's been further commentary of the commentaries, and so it's quite a lot going on there. Then whoops, sorry, I needed to have another one. Okay, yeah, so before we go on to the next bit that I wanted to show you, so this is, so some of you might recognize these pictures. So we said that all the knowledge comes from God. So this is Shiva, who we say started as the first one who started instructing, and then there is other ones, Dakshinamurti, and here this is Veda Vyasa, who kind of, so we don't really say that, well, we'll talk about Vedavyasa in a moment. And then this is Shankaracharya. And then there are various people who came in between. And then this is my teacher's teacher, basically. So coming in that lineage. And this is another one of my teacher's teachers. So this is Swami Shivananda. This is Swami Dayananda. And these are so basically this is the lineage, and from today this is what we're learning. So this is, I learned in a slightly more traditional way, and you're learning in a slightly different way with PowerPoints and all that kind of stuff, but this is where the knowledge comes. And when we think about it, this is how long this has been going on, and it's pretty extraordinary, really, that there's been an unbroken lineage from that time until today about how we are carrying on learning what has been going on. So it is quite out of this world in many respects. And so in this tradition, we have a lot of reverence for the teachers. They are very much respected, and so it's just a very cultural thing, and you can understand why as well. And they're guardian of this quite special knowledge. And then, so we've looked at this a little bit already. So this is Veda Vyasas, and so just to recap, so the original source is the Veda or the Shruti, so which is discovered by the rishis or sages and being taught directly by God. So its unique characteristic is that it came directly from the gods and not from human. And also the oldest Veda is the Rig Veda, which is about 1500 BC, or 2000 BC, we don't know exactly, but roughly this is what it is. And one extremely amazing thing is that the message all throughout is extremely consistent. So despite the fact that, it's survived that many times, it's in 4 different places, but the message there is very, very consistent all throughout. And also, I mean, sometimes people kind of think, oh well, there's so many gods in Hinduism and all that, but then there is one consciousness, and there is one, and there is the one creator, and that is extremely consistent. And but then obviously there can be quite a lot of misunderstanding about that. So we've looked at this one, and then now I wanted to go on to the second layer. So the first layer was the Shruti with the Vedas, etc. And then now comes the Smriti. So what it means here, it is these literatures now are starting to be man-made, so they don't come directly from the gods as such, but originate from the Vedas. So basically all these Smriti and the remembered, so here it's using the word remembered, and so this is from man, and this also is just come in support of explaining the Vedas. So all these second layer of literature exists purely to explain what is in the Vedas. So so don't worry about any of these names. You don't need to understand them all, but I just kind of wanted to show you that, this was kind of came from somewhere, but not just plucked out of anywhere. So there are all the Puranas, so there are 18 of them. And here there are Puranas about Shiva, about the various gods, about Devi. So that's the goddess, the mother aspect of worship. So everything there is, each one of them kind of considers the one that they are talking about as the one, but that kind of has the we used the word gunas before, has the gunas of Brahman imposed on to kind of then talk about these glories, etc. And then there are the itihasa, so they are the history and a little bit more. So there's the Ramayana and Mahabharata that you might have heard of, and in Ramayana there is a lot of Vedanta in there as well, and Bhagavad Gita is a subsection of Mahabharata. So Mahabharata is massive with hundreds of thousands of verses, and Bhagavad Gita is only about 720 kind of verses within the Mahabharata, so tiny 700 odd verses. Okay, so Bhagavad Gita is also talking about Vedanta, about this self-knowledge. And then there's all these Dharma Shastra, so the teachings on Dharma, so teaching on how to live, and they're by various people as well. And then there is the Darshana, so these are something that I wanted to talk a little bit more about, not a lot. So the Darshanas, Darshana means philosophy, basically, loosely translated. And there are various ones that have existed. So all of these here, these 6 philosophies, they're all based on the Vedas, but they've had various kind of focuses as time went on. So the first 2 ones, so they are essentially the basis for quantum physics. So and this is how, so they're highly technical, and they're the basic of quantum physics. And then came Sankhya and Yoga, so we kind of talk of them together. They are dualistic philosophies, so I'll talk about what they are briefly. So and they are quite related. So it is about the theory of creation, and within yoga there are several books, like there is Patanjali Yoga Sutra that we've mentioned a few times, and then there are other Hatha Yoga Pradipika and others as well. And then there is Purva Mimamsa and then the Uttara Mimamsa, so there are 2 different ones. And then Vedanta comes under Uttara Mimamsa. So basically, there are all these 6. They're slightly different, but so what Vedanta has done is kind of try to reconcile all of them and taken bits of everyone to kind of explain the nature of truth, if you like. And then there is also the last bit, which is agama or tantra. So again, so this is a word that's very misunderstood, and people take tantra to mean something that it absolutely isn't. But so tantra again is about the various the various aspects, and the various gods as well, if you like, that are explained slightly differently. So we can talk about these some other time. Then, so to go back to this word Upanishad, which we talked about earlier on. So here, so don't worry, as usual, don't worry about anything that is in green. So this is just for those with a slight knowledge of the language already. So the root, so each word in Sanskrit has roots. So root, the shad, the last four words, the last four letters, comes from, is actually got two prefixes. So it's upa and ni, and this is what it means. So the shad here means to either to destroy, to reach, and to weaken. So three different kind of meanings. And so the word is also means self-knowledge. So the whole of the Upanishad, it's also talk of as Brahma Vidya, so the knowledge of the self. And in the secondary sense of the word, Upanishad also refers to the book. So the books are called the Upanishad, the various books that come from there. But actually what it means, the word itself means self-knowledge. And therefore, just to go at the last bit of what is on the slide, so what Upanishad does is to help, if we take these three meanings from before, so it helps us to destroy ignorance. So ignorance about what? Ignorance about who we are. So we are not, we've looked at this. So ignorance means we don't really know who we are. We think we are this body when actually we're not. Okay, so this body will go one day, whether you like it or not, and we are not this body. So basically that's the ignorance. The ignorance is the false notion that we are with this body, or some people think, oh no, actually I'm this mind, which we're not either. I mean, we all know that brain cells die, so we're experiencing some of that ourselves, and so intelligence weakens and all that kind of stuff. So we are not even any of these either. So we are beyond all that thing that decays eventually. So that's the ignorance that Upanishad help us to destroy. To destroy what for? To attain this self-knowledge. And again, what for is to weaken the suffering and the sorrow, so we can actually discover who we really are, so we can be happy, essentially. So that's what the Upanishads try to do. And so now I wanted to talk a little bit more about Adi Shankaracharya. So Adi Shankaracharya, so here in the middle, so he died at the age, well, died as in he left his human form at the age of 32. And so at the age of 7, he knew the 4 Vedas. So there isn't any other person who's actually known the 4 Vedas. So even knowing one of the Vedas is not possible necessarily in, so he knew all the 4 Vedas. And he was born at a time where there was great confusion. So confusion in the sense that people were fighting with each other about, we're talking about all these 6 philosophies before. So people were kind of fighting, people were saying, oh, this is not true, this is true. And there was no authority about what the truth was. So at the time when he was kind of born, he was very devastated about what was going on and why this was happening. So his teacher was also kind of trying to look at the cause, but so these 6 philosophies that I briefly mentioned, they're all from the Vedas, but then there were different interpretations of things, and there were more than one. According to them, there was more than one truth that was going on, and that can't be right. I mean, there's only one truth, and that's it. So there's, so there might be different ways of explaining it. So then what he did is he went through the country and through India, and and established all these ethical debates to really try and find out the truth. So basically, he didn't behave like our politicians do. So he kind of went and listened to everyone very, very carefully, what they had to say, and then started speaking, and then started taking one point by one point, and then try and kind of see where the fallacies in the logic came. So really had this, he's a great theologian, or whatever you want to call it, a great scholar, a great poet, and a great writer, and then, or even now, we can see him as a great CEO, as a great visionary, and about what he did. So then he went round the whole country and try and established the truth, and through these kind of debates. I mean, it's a fascinating story about what he did and how he did it. And so essentially, what he tried to do is that, so once he's kind of done this for about 10 years or so, where 9 years, at the age of almost 16, he was done with his establishing the truth, and then it was about preparing for succession, etc. And then how he did that, he had 4 major disciples, and even the story of all of them, I mean, they are not. None of them is kind of ordinary in any way. So the first one, the first one called Suresh Acharya. So he had a previous name before. So he was the one who was kind of the most. One of the 4 figures of one of the other of Purva Mimamsa, and so he was kind of debating all that, and then when he lost the debate against Shankaracharya, he decided to become his disciple. And then he led one of the 4 places. So basically, what Shankaracharya did is he established 4 centers in India: north, south, east, and west, and each one of them were meant to actually to kind of dissipate the knowledge and reflect about the knowledge and be guardian of this knowledge from then on. So, and the really interesting thing is, so he established that, right? So this is exactly what happens in companies nowadays. You've got headquarters, and then you've got, around. So this is just absolutely fantastic when you kind of start thinking about it, what he did at that time. So, so these are, I mean, you don't need to know all this, but just so you get an idea. So the other disciples was Totaka and Padmapada and Hasta Malaka. So they were the 4 ones, and each one of them was given one of the 4 Vedas to be the guardian of. So they had their headquarters, if you like, which is called feet of knowledge, and the Sanskrit word is pita for those. And then what he'd said is that there are, from these are the great proclamations of the Vedas. So essentially the idea of what the Vedas are, as I said, is very, very consistent. So all of them is saying the same thing here. And the first one is, I am Brahman. So you know what Brahman is. This is consciousness. And this is the term, Aham Brahmasmi. And then this self is Brahman. So, and I am Atma Brahma. And then consciousness is Brahman. And then thou that are thou, so you are this, so Tattvamasi. So I don't know if any of you recognize these proclamations, but they for those of you who did the 30 days of meditation, the one that we did with Deepak Chopra thing, and there were loads of these that form part of this meditation that we were reciting, and we were asked to think about these without really understanding where where they came from and what they actually mean, and we still don't understand what they mean. But so it's just to kind of say, these things come from somewhere, but we haven't necessarily heard of this. So so this is Adi Shankaracharya, and then these are his 4 disciples. I mean, the story of each one of them is absolutely fantastic as well, about how he met them and what he found, the uniqueness of each one of them. And then, the last thing that I wanted to talk about here is this, what this Vedanta is, and what is Advaita Vedanta. So Advaita Vedanta means non-dualistic. So there is this idea of oneness. So basically, if you forget Advaita Vedanta, all you are talking about is oneness, is the theory of oneness. So the story of oneness is kind of, sometimes it is easier to say what I'm not. Okay, so sometimes rather than saying what we really are, because it's kind of hard to understand, and so we start by saying what we're not first, or what oneness isn't. So oneness is, well, I am not about what I am. So I'm not, I don't know if you recognize these wordings from something that we've done before. So I'm not the mind. We know that. We're not the body, obviously. We're not the intellect. We're not the ego or the memory. We're not the ears, the skin, nose, eyes, space, earth, fire, wind, or water. So we are not the vital breath. So this is the prana that we talk about. The 5 elements. So we know what the 5 elements are. And the constituents of the body. So there are, in Ayurveda, there are different ways of talking about the constituents of the body. And there are the 5 sheaths. So we talked about the 5 sheaths as well. The food sheath, the food sheath, the energy sheath, and then there is the mind sheath, the mental sheath, and then there is the intellectual sheath, and then there is the Anandamaya Kosha, the blissful sheath. And then we're not the speech, hands and feet. So here we're not referring to the actual physical bit, but the power of grasping, the power of locomotion, etc. So basically, the hands won't move unless there is prana in them. Okay, so the hands are physical, but for the hands to do anything, then we will need the prana behind it, or so that's what we're talking about. So, and then it was the theory of oneness. What it says is that in me there is no like or dislike, there is no greed or delusion, there's no pride or jealousy, no duty, no desire for wealth, lust or liberation, no virtue or vice, pleasure or pain. And I, the real I, do not need any mantras, no pilgrimage, no scriptures, or no rituals. I am not the experience nor the experience itself. So I have no fear of death, no caste or creed, no father, no mother. So that's the consciousness. I am not a relative, friend, teacher, or student. So then we've spent so much time saying what we're not. So what are we? So we are devoid of duality. So my form is formlessness. I exist everywhere, pervading all senses. I am neither attached, nor captive, nor free. So this pure consciousness is what we are. So there's the same consciousness exists in all of us, as well as the creator. So there is actually this real oneness. And so this is also called the Satchit Ananda. So existence, knowledge, bliss, absolute is what I am. So so this is what this non-dualistic is, and dualistic means that there is a separation. Otherwise, there's not that oneness. So we can talk about it more. And also, I mean, I don't know what you think, but about oneness, we've also heard about something that Jesus said: "My Father and I are one." And so whether that's what is understood and that what was meant is something that that we can talk about and see what people think. And so in summary, just to kind of bring it all together about what we've done today, is so we have been studying Vedanta, so which is the philosophy of oneness, but with the support of other philosophies. So we've brought in as well yoga in it and other things, and but they're not contradictory. And from our point of view, and from from an academic point of view, there'll be various things. But then we've taken things so we've got a coherent kind of knowledge for us. And what kind of knowledge is the practical philosophy is what we are interested in, and the reason we are interested in it is because it tells us about who we are. It's directly relevant to us. And we also need, with the self-knowledge being very different from science, therefore we cannot use the same method as proofs. We cannot, it's not something that we can do in the lab ever. So science is not the way to prove any of this, and the proof lie in the structures, in the scriptures. So what are the implications for me? So what does that mean for me? And so we've talked about this as well, is as we know, only a few people are interested in this knowledge, and it's absolutely fine. It's not for everyone. And if you think, even hearing about it, if that's something that is interesting for you, then it's something that you might want to pursue or not. And if it is something that speaks to you, then it is good to make time for it. And again, the reason why, I mean, there is, like with everything in this philosophy, there is an explanation about why some people are interested and why some people are not. So this depends on our vasanas, on our things that have happened previously, in previous lifetimes, about what our inclinations are, what we have been feeding ourselves for in all these years and all these lifetimes, not years, and also, I mean, and today, if we are talking about it, this is not the first time that you're hearing about this. And so people don't kind of just go there first time without having heard about this, or without having had some exposure in some ways, or in whatever ways. So it is just a journey that we practice over many lifetimes and without any expectation. So it's not kind of result driven. It's not about meeting targets. So it's not about any things like that. But it is about a pursuit that we do with extreme patience and sincerity. And finally, how do we know whether this is working for us, or whether this is for us or not, is to kind of, I mean, as I said earlier on, we need to have some bit of faith, at least, to kind of make us be interested, or to make us want to do something for ourselves, at least think about things, if not anything else. And then how we know this will work for us or not is after, a while, you will start thinking that you'll become a bit more contented. You will kind of be emotionally stronger, emotionally. I'm not saying, lives go up and down, you'll experience these, but then you'll bounce back. You'll have a different understanding of things. You'll start being happier. You will start enjoying your company more, and you will also kind of feel that you're not so much dependent on what's happening in the outside world. You can be really the master of your own happiness. So this is so this is me. So so we will end the session formally, and then we'll discuss. So Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namah. Hari Om.